Well, I am Robert Scarlett, better known as Old Scarlett, and my claim to fame is that I was the 16th century gravedigger in what was then Peterborough Abbey that turned into Peterborough Cathedral, but it was still the Abbey when I was working here. And I suppose I was the A-lister of the day. I was the celebrity, the main man, somebody that everybody knew. So I buried generations of people, and I knew everybody in the city, and everybody in the city knew me because I was obviously wearing scarlet. I was very well known, and they had some connection with me in some way or other. I lived to be 98 years old, which in the 16th century was unique. Most men lived to be about 40 years old, something like that. So 98 years old was significant. I was around at the time when Tudor England, Peterborough Cathedral, Peterborough Abbey, and then the cathedral was at the heart of Tudor England. So I buried 3 queens. The first was Katherine of Aragon, who was the first wife of Henry VIII. And we all know the story of Henry's 6 wives. She was the first. She couldn't give birth to a son, which was all important to him, to have a son successor to him on the throne. So what he did was he farmed her out to open prisons in the end, and the last one of which was at Kimbolton. And when she died in 1536, I buried her here in the Abbey, and lots of people in the city came out to greet her body as it was paraded around the city. Then it was paraded around this building, and then I buried her, and to this day she is in that grave. And thousands of Spaniards come and see the grave, and it's a point of pilgrimage for so many, and it's wonderful to see them still coming to this day. On the other side from the high altar, from where I buried Katherine of Aragon, I also buried Mary, Queen of Scots. And Mary I buried in completely different circumstances. As opposed to Katherine, Mary I buried at the dead of night. It was all very hush-hush. Mary, who wanted to get onto the throne of England, but Elizabeth I, her cousin, said no way. So to cut a long story short, the 2 sets of advisors really were against each other and persuaded one another about how important it was for one to get on the throne, and Elizabeth's advisors said no way. So they farmed Mary out to a prison. Elizabeth did that, and she was executed, Mary, at Fotheringhay, just down the road from here. She was brought here, and then I buried her in secret to start with in a grave near the high altar. She was there until her son James I ordered her to be exhumed from here. Her body was taken from the grave here and is now buried in Westminster Abbey within feet of the woman Elizabeth I who ordered her killed. Irony of ironies. Then the 3rd queen I buried was my own wife Margaret, and she was my own queen. And then, having buried Margaret, I then remarried at the age of 89. So I was a dude of my day, and I knew what I was about. Everybody loved me and bought me beers and sandwiches and felt sorry for me, and I was outside and I was living a life where I was burying people into my 90s, and it was extraordinary that I had this ability to carry on when everybody else had given up the ghost, quite literally. So I was bug free, I was living the open air life. There was no bugs in those days because I was outdoors. I was chasing dogs out of the building. I was making sure that people behaved themselves and the monks were in good order, but I was in good health, and that's what mattered. When I died, I was buried here in the footprint of this cathedral building, and as opposed to the queens who were buried up near the high altar, the lowest of the low, the dog's body, the man who did the mucky jobs, the dirty jobs, was buried here in the footprint of this building. That's how much I was loved. People come to see me to this day. A candle is sometimes put on my grave, and that says everything in the 21st century. I'm so famous that part of my legacy is that I have 2 photographs of me on the cathedral wall. They're both at the west end of the building. The first one is fairly soon after I died, and it was only revealed once they took off the older or the newer, more modern portrait of me for cleaning, and they thought, oh, there's the original right there. The first one has me what appears to be smoking a pipe but I'm not sure that I did. I was far too healthy for that. But the tools of my trade are clearly visible, and on the more modern one is a more graphic one of me with a skull in the photograph, with the tools of the trade, a spade, and they say that William Shakespeare was the person who had heard of me, and he featured me as the gravedigger in the well-known story Hamlet.